Kia ora, Nisambula Vinaka, namaste. My name is Zaynel Sushil. I'm a public health advisor at Waikato District Health Board. This slide here just gives you a bit of a background on where I'm from. I was born in Fiji, but I was raised here for the last 17 years. We moved from Fiji because a couple of politicians were being idiots back in 2000, and my mum and dad got pretty annoyed. And they said, okay, we're packing up and we're moving, and we moved to South Auckland. We thought things would be smoother, but life, as you know, is not exactly smooth. But after 17 years, I'm so happy that where I am. I've had the opportunity to make a lot of friends in New Zealand and live a really beautiful life. Part of my education was at the University of Auckland, where I completed a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Geography, and somehow ended up in health doing my postgrad in public health, where my research focus was obesity prevention, specifically looking at food environments at a very national level. So I was looking at the deserts and swamps in New Zealand and helping develop the evidence base for that. And just recently, my work got published, so it's one of my biggest accomplishments this year, which looked at the clustering of unhealthy food outlets in New Zealand and what that looked like spatially and in relation to area deprivation. And we mapped out a couple of hotspots, and it's the typical, areas that came up. We all know that because we live or nearby, we live close to them, or we live in them, and we know what's happening around our neighborhood. So South Auckland was one of them. Another area was Tokoroa. Who's been to Tokoroa here? Oh, yeah, awesome. Everyone's been to Tokoroa. Great. So you know what I'm talking about here. Well, I guess the story I'm about to tell you is one of many challenges and complexities. It's about perseverance and belonging. It's about togetherness. It's about food security, sovereignty, a lot of themes that you guys have all heard today. And a lot in collaboration. I know that we've been talking about case studies and different types of social enterprises, but I'm not too sure if anyone touched on what Akina Foundation touched on, the models of different social enterprises and where you sit on the spectrum of that. So before I begin, the social enterprise that we've developed is community-led, much of which Julia touched on. A community-led model is quite different to, say, an NGO or business coming up with an idea to do social enterprising as part of their business model, or an individual doing, driving the social enterprise concept. With a community-led social enterprise, it's really empowering the community, giving the concept that a few individuals and I developed over to the community to get their buy-in and help them drive it. And you just advise, give them all the resources and tools they need to develop it based on how they relate to their environment locally, based on how they want to expand the program. So it's really empowering. Community-led can be so powerful if that collaboration takes place, if you get that buy-in. And today I'll be talking about, yes, it's a healthy school lunch program, it's community-led, but the challenges we encountered, the buy-in we had to get, the approaches I used, and what the overall end game was. And I guess the end game for us is really trying to create systemic change. Now, I know a speaker over here talked about the, Emily, I believe, the New Zealand food system. Now, I'm a bit of a systems thinker myself. I'm not a social enterprise expert, nor do I claim to be a social entrepreneur. I'm a health researcher, and a bit of that links to systems thinking to prevent obesity in New Zealand. And part of that discussion links back to the local food environment and how that looks nationally as well. So systems thinking is where some of this work is linked into. And you'll be hearing how systems thinking can help you identify some leverage points in your community, some opportunities to collaborate, as well as improve processes within your social enterprise. Make your processes better, because you don't know who you're connected to until you map it all up, until you sit down and start mapping things and be like, who's this guy? What does he do? Oh, she's doing this in the community. How can we link up with that? Where's the alignment? And when you start thinking big picture, then you find that, hey, there's potential to actually collaborate, and you don't need money to do the talking. It's actually, you have everything in the community to start it off. And you'd be surprised how much funding I had to actually kickstart Ka Pai Kai. Ka Pai Kai only had me with a crazy idea to follow a local story. The reason for that is that social enterprise and the role it has to play in improving the health and well-being of our communities. The evidence base to support that in New Zealand is very, very low, and it's growing. There's different examples around the room. There's evaluations that are being done to grow that evidence base that the biggest public health gains could potentially be made if public health money is spent into supporting social entrepreneurs. Because social enterprises are practical solutions to complex issues. And you need, when you look at it at the very big level, you get the United Nations who collaborate at a national level. You take the same idea, you apply it at the very grassroots level. Collaboration is what brings out success. You don't have to do it all on your own. You don't have to do it from one discipline. It takes a multidisciplinary approach to address some of these complex issues. Okay, with that said, introducing the Ka Pai Kai community model is something that you'll learn, achieving sustainability, long-term and short-term approaches, and some key steps to success in rural communities. The reason I say this is that you can take components of this program and apply it in your urban setting. Cities are quite big with their own sort of mechanics, and it takes a person who lives in that community to understand those mechanics, and I haven't had the opportunity to do a pilot in an urban setting, and that would look very different. I would probably not aim at doing a whole city. It may just be suburbs when you think about it. So you would actually take the program and implement it in a suburb, in a community like South Auckland, which would mean it's a bit more feasible. And some systems thinking. Okay, cool. So a bit of a background into the Ka Pai Kai story, how it all began, how did I get involved? So about 16 months ago, the DHB hospital in Tokoroa heard a cry, more of like heard a call from the principal of Amsfield Primary School, Bex Kilger, and she was annoyed and frustrated by all the unhealthy food that students were bringing in to her school. And she was annoyed by the parents throwing McDonald's over the fence during lunchtime. And she was appalled at her own kitchen, her own school cafe, providing the types of lunches they did. She was quite new in her role, and she was really frustrated that this is not a supportive food environment for our children. You know, how can we change this? What are our options? And she had very limited options. And as you know, many rural schools sort of outsource food from big companies. They don't really have like a kitchen that's making and preparing foods, unless you're like a secondary school, which would have appropriate facilities. So Bex was in a tough position. She got told to connect to the local hospital cafeteria. We recently implemented the DHB healthy eating policy, which transformed our own food practices within our organization, which sort of caused the ripple effect that you've been hearing about, these knock-on effects because of government policies and stuff like that, what it's meant for the community. And I guess because we started doing healthier lunch options for staff and patients, Sierra, who at the time was the hospital cafeteria manager, decided, hey, this is an actual good opportunity to support a school who's really in need. You know, what can we do to support this school? And is it realistically possible from a DHB perspective to do that? How about we do a pilot? Under the radar, kinda under the radar, we did the pilot without any like official DHB support. Sarah noticed that the uptake of the lunches were quite good. There was good demand from Amsfield Primary School. And it wasn't long till other schools realized that Amsfield is really getting value for money from their students, you know. We were selling the lunches for prices ranging from $2 to $5, depending on the lunch packs. And you'll see the photos in the pamphlets. So it started catching on, and in a small community like Tokoroa, it doesn't take too long. We didn't do any marketing at all, you know. It was one school who took it up, and other schools followed. There was more demand, and that was really the driving force. So you'll be seeing some of these leverage points that I've been talking about. If you see this happening in your community, then yeah, there's appetite for change, and that's what you want to look at. If there's appetite, if there's demand for healthier foods, then yes, you have a catalyst. And for us, it was Amsfield Primary School. I joined the team somewhere in July last year, and my role was come in and do a research evaluation. It can't run from the DHB forever. How do we make it sustainable, and what will this look like for the community? Okay, I was a rookie health promoter at that time, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I've never been to Tokoroa, never ever had any relationships with it before besides stopping. I'm ashamed to say this, but to get some takeaway on the way to Wellington, because you know, like it was a school university trip, and it was a geography trip to Hastings. It happens, I think, every 2 years or so. So it was a random stop, and that was my first time actually stopping in Tokoroa. And if you've been there, you know there's a bunch of takeaways, and the options of healthy food is very limited. So, yeah, I went into a community as a complete stranger and had to fill the role of a social entrepreneur, think like a social entrepreneur, think as a researcher as well, but also connect with this community who doesn't really know me, my peers. You know, there's a process, there's a cultural process working in a community where there's a high percentage of Māori and Pacifica. And I didn't have that. I worked on my own. You know, I'm from South Auckland. I've grown up with some of my best friends from Māori and Pacific backgrounds. And for me to connect with my community, I introduced myself as I did today, and I just tried to bond with them at a human level, not as a health researcher. And it was very difficult, it wasn't easy. Different people had opinions differently about a government agent coming into their community, and I respected that. But I did my best, and I made a lot of friends at the end, because I'm a bit of a joker and a bit of a people person, so it works. Yeah, so my report identified a couple of approaches to make the program sustainable, and one of it was social enterprising. And these are the two approaches. I'm sorry if it's not clear, and it's very academic-ish, but it's a process. And short term, yes, making Ka Pai Kai sustainable would mean a few things. Firstly, social enterprise might do it if it's community-led. Secondly, long term, we want majority of the organizations and agencies who have a vested interest in nutrition, physical activity, food, to believe in the concept, to get buy-in, and then embed the concept in their organization. Because if they support Ka Pai Kai, which will address a multitude of, objectives, they can align their work to Ka Pai Kai, and then from there report back to their funding partners, report back to the respective agencies that support them, and be like, yes, they are supporting nutrition and achieving their goals, and meeting against their annual planning and stuff like that. So that's long term. That's called institutionalization. It's kind of embedding the concept so it's sustainable in the community and sustainable in an organization long term. Short term, we need volunteers, we need whatever's free and available in the community. And I don't know what I was doing. And if any social entrepreneurs here, they would agree, you got to wing it. You got to just go out there and make some partnerships. You got to see where the alignment is. And you got to do some sort of mapping exercises in a group, invite them together, and just talk about where the alignment can be and what are some ways we can support each other to achieve a common goal. So initial challenges in the first 6 months. Should Ka Pai Kai should the DHB adopt Ka Pai Kai? So that was a question that came up early. Is it feasible for the District Health Board to run this program? And due to our procurement and health and safety policies, it's not feasible for us. And plus, the idea is to build community ownership of not only the solution, problem, but also the solution. And like I said, social enterprises are a practical solution. So evidence elsewhere suggests community ownership is the best option. Already mentioned which policies were sort of hindering us to sort of support the program in the long term. How long could we operate from the hospital? Realistically, till the end of this year, my deadline was, or is, December. For one of the things that had to happen was that we needed to find a community kitchen. Yeah, we needed to find a community kitchen, and in a small place like Tokoroa, some might say it's not small, but in Tokoroa, you don't have a lot of registered commercial kitchens, and it will be pretty hard to negotiate a pretty good deal, but we were lucky. Like I said, my good charms and skills and people skills paid off, and we found a commercial kitchen, and Tokoroa Club actually gifted it to us for a 10-week pilot, which was term 3 of this year. So we have been progressing because we've been on a deadline and we understand the need to get this out of the DHB and into community ownership. So there's a couple of things happening. We're trying to build community ownership, and we have this program that's actually sitting in a government organization. And will there be uptake of this community, uptake of this kaupapa, this idea, this program from the community? Will they buy it in? And for that, we had to look at an approach that would sort of help us attract the most passionate people in the community who don't care, who know that it's worth investing into Ka Pai Kai. And for that, we used sort of like a networking strategy. Like I said, I was new to the community. I didn't have relationships. So we worked with the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is someone who holds all the position or all the connections in the community. And for us, that was the social sector trials coordinator, Marama Tahapihi. I don't know if anyone has connections with her, but she's awesome. And she bought into my concept, and she helped me facilitate a hui and invited the community. And we shared this program with them. From there, we formed an advisory committee. It was very informal. And if you go back to my earlier diagram, it's about attracting. One of the steps was to attract individuals. Where we're going too far. This is what happens when you don't know what you're expecting. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Come on. Okay, there we are. Okay. So we created this informal advisory committee. It's just made out of like-minded people who don't know what they're investing their time and effort into yet, but they're interested to hear more, and it's a stepwise process. Once you get them to this stage, the next stage is, identifying how they can support Ka Pai Kai from their respective organizations, from their respective position in the community, and then just might be an individual in the community who's passionate about nutrition. And they're willing to offer their time in the kitchen to prepare the meals. And those are the individuals we want to attract. And we're lucky that SWIPEX, who are an organization that support the Pacific Island communities, and Raukawa, who are the local iwi, who supported us in this journey. Yeah, they bought into the idea, even though they didn't fund anything specifically, They supported us morally as well as helped us build the networks that we needed. They also supported us by doing delivery in the community. So part of doing healthy lunches is being able to transport those lunches to schools. And there are 12 schools, I think, roughly around in the Tokoroa area, in the cluster area. So this is what our advisory group looked like. Different organizations around the table. And Jasmine was one of them. You still work for Heart Foundation? Yeah? All right, cool. 2 jobs, huh? Damn, she's a busy girl, that one. But I connected with her very early on. And I liked what she was doing in her community, and she liked what I was doing in my community. And yeah, we just teamed up and we got people together. And this builds confidence in the community. It builds confidence for schools, knowing that so many organizations are creating ownership. They recognize that food security is an issue. What are we going to do about it? Also, a previous presenter said that, we don't want the community to see it as a service, which is true. You don't want schools to be thinking Ka Pai Kai is a service, because it's not. It's their program. It's for the community, by the community. And some schools have varying perspectives. They still treat it like a service. And we're changing that slowly, and it's taking time. Some schools believe in it so much that they're sending students down to check it out and learn the process. Alternative education students are part of the program, where they've been coming with, so we've done a pilot this year, with a group of alternative education students coming down and spending time in the kitchen. So this is just a learning process for us. We're trying to see what we can gain from, what the students potentially could gain from spending time in the kitchen. And that might mean working with the gateway coordinator to sort of provide NCA unit standard credits. Alternative sort of outcomes could be, it's a transition phase for them before they aim for higher education. We're still building that, so that picture, like, you'll hear it more. We're still building the details. It will take time. And it's really the community that needs to decide the details. I'm just the big picture guy who tries to bring everyone together. So building capacity and capability for community ownership. So yeah, Sierra Turpet, who is the founder of Ka Pai Kai, she was the lady that started it all with that one school, Amsford Primary School. She's also a full-time employee of the Waikato District Health Board. So she's been pushing and trying to develop it a lot, and supporting the kitchen staff, who are the volunteers, in their roles to be really effective, know the processes, and ensure the quality of food is good. But she's overcommitted, she's stressed, and she wants more leadership, and we're working on that. It's like, how do we build leadership? And it's these inquiry questions will come around, and for different contexts, it'll be quite different. But for us, it's more about the passionate ones will always stay. We have a number of volunteers, and we always notice that there's 2 or 3 volunteers who are always in the kitchen, and those are the leaders you're looking for. DHB account still connected to the Ka Pai Kai kitchen. So as I mentioned, it was under the DHB umbrella, and we've been fortunate enough to finally form a governance group for Ka Pai Kai, which is made up of local people, and we're just supporting to facilitate all of that. So that's meant that we've been able to create our own society bank account. So we've developed an incorporated society, basically, to sort of umbrella Ka Pai Kai. So we can apply for, I guess, grants to develop the pathways further. And Jasmine is part of that. She's helped me facilitate this. Yeah, we need support in the kitchen. Another thing that came up was schools were capping on lunches. So lunches were being, say, the $5 pack, they would charge 50 cents. And we're not making any profit. No one gets paid. I don't get paid. Sarah doesn't get paid. Everyone in the kitchen's doing it for free. Deliveries are being done for free. All the profits are being reinvested into grocery items in a pot, so we know that for next term we can kickstart, or for our website, which we're working on developing, and all those has some costs associated with it. So we're like frustrated with schools. How can we stop schools from capping the lunches, make it affordable as possible? Really, our end game is to have these lunches as affordable as possible, even if we can get it to $1. Because for me, nothing in this world is free. And with that in mind, different people in the community have different perspectives around food and children. And for me, understanding the value of what you're eating is very important. If students come and spend different, enterprises have different approach to show value for food. You know, we're spending time, we're cultivating, we're cooking, we're preparing, we're eating. All right. If students don't have those opportunities, they do still understand financial literacy, which is something I've picked up through my environmental scan and surveys, that students are bringing in $15 to $20 a day to school. But how that money is being used up throughout the day, I have no idea. You know, some of it's being spent during lunchtime, some of it's spent during after school before they go home. Some of it's spent before school buying a pie at the local dairy shop. So there's a lot of complexity, and we're just trying to understand those details. Yeah. This is something, so if you're working with schools, you're going to get some emails, and sometimes it's not going to be happy emails from schools, all right? Like I said, they still see it as services. So stuff that I've highlighted, like, oh, lunches weren't delivered on time today, or, you know, this salad wasn't really great for our students, it didn't taste great, or the packaging wasn't great, and it was, there was sloppy packaging on the day. And we keep improving our systems because we are working with volunteers, and sometimes we get new volunteers, and I guess the meals may not be prepared in a way at times. Yeah, and sometimes delivery can be a little late when there's a catering order, so we're just still trying to improve our processes. Like I said, it's a learning year for us, and I'm not going to hide anything. It's pretty interesting, some of the things, but still she's kind of supportive. She's like, yeah, this, and then like, yeah, we love this program, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, lady. Usually it does take understanding that she's an admin person, and this sort of concept is new to her. And what we've done we're planning to invite all the school admins to the kitchen, so they spend some time understanding what the process. So they understand what we do in the kitchen, and we're not perfect, but we may improve in the near future, and we're just trying to build that patience, build that mutual respect between us. And the admin team, they're the gatekeepers for the school. They're the ones who send my emails to the principal. So I need to work with these guys, and it's important to have them in your team. So what does the whole of community approach look like? For us, we've defined it as whole of community approach. It takes a whole community to raise a child. All right, good, I'm on time. We share common vision. We're like-minded people, and it takes collaboration to achieve something. It stems from system science. So another way to describe this would be like a whole of school approach. If there are any schools here, they understand that. And all of that is based from system science. And this is our community model. This is what it looks like. This is the big picture game. This is not me in the background developing it. These are things that are happening in the community. The individuals in the community who are working like Enviro School Gardens. Enviro Schools is in a couple of schools in Tokoroa. And they're doing really great work. We know that there's love, food, hate, waste available in the Waikato region, and it just hasn't arrived in the South Waikato because there's no one to drive it. So we're building capacity at the local council as well as in the community to drive that kaupapa. And then you've got this side where you've got Project Energize, and they do a really good job educating children, eating with them, as well as empowering schools to take ownership around nutrition and physical activity. And that's where Heart Foundation and the good work that Jasmine does fits in with schools. It's about using these resources in the schools to deliver your message, deliver the message that Ka Pai Kai is sharing. And being consistent between our organizations, we need to send consistent messages with a unified voice, I guess a unified coordinated approach. Just it's schools, feel more appreciated when it's like that. They hate being bombarded by different organizations from different angles, sending different emails. So we're trying to minimize all of that, and it's working at the moment. Training Cafe, this is a concept that we got inspired from Taumaranui, which is my jurisdiction as well. I've been fortunate enough to just touch on that story a bit and see what they're doing. And our Training Cafe links into Waiariki Institute of Technology, which no longer exists. I've been told I'm not allowed to use that. But the culinary school teacher over there, Lorna, she's very passionate around this kind of stuff, and she's very supportive. And this term, we've had 3 trainee chefs in the kitchen, sort of supporting the volunteer staff, but as well as learning what Healthy Kai looks like. And we're going to put an evaluation in place to see what some of the outcomes were. Business support. So this is where we start thinking about income generation, how we can maximize the profit that we're making so we can create the social impact that we want to achieve. And that's, the income part should always be secondary. I say this because I might be wrong, I don't know, but your primary objective of why you're running a social enterprise should always be because you want to create a social impact, positive change in the community. It should never be about, oh yeah, I want to make some quick and easy money, doing this concept, people will buy it in. I don't believe in that, and the community I'm working with definitely doesn't believe in that, but it does create opportunities for jobs, and I believe in stimulating the local economy very much, and that's my job. My job is to empower communities, and I've done the math around it, and if you can create local jobs and sustain those jobs, people will get out of poverty, all right? And it doesn't matter what ministry you work for, if you can encourage that space, there will be change. Okay, cool, so with that said, yeah, food retailers, there's not many, we only have, I think, 2 green stores and 2 supermarkets. There's an overabundance of unhealthy food retailers. There's a really awesome community garden that we're linked to. If you've ever been to Tokoroa, check out the community garden. It's got vegetables I've never seen. So I'm pretty impressed by that, and we're going to link in with that. So with the Enviro schools, that conversation, that partnership has taken around a year now. And really, I was so impressed by their kaupapa, their Maori philosophy around food and how people relate to the land and how you cultivate, and the education, through marakai. Those sort of frameworks that they use are so cool because it relates back to creating that cultural sense, cultural belonging, creating meaningful, purposeful gardens. And my hope is to also see one day more school students, more primary school students in our kitchen actually preparing these meals and selling it back to their schools. That's sort of the stuff that I want to see, and we're not there yet, but we're working towards that. So as you can see, we're a baby organization, very conceptual at the moment, but it is progressing. How best to implement systemic change at a scale in communities to prevent obesity. I know you could change that, and you can say how to improve food security. For me, that is the higher sort of research question. You can break it down and you can say how we improve food security, how do we mobilize a community, anything. But really, in my project, it's a very broad project, and it will take multiple years to fall into place. There are really four work streams. The first one is food provision, which is Ka Pai Kai. The other one's food education, and we're working with Chef Jimmy Boswell and the Food Revolution campaign, which is Jamie Oliver's branding, and how we can sort of use that, use the training cafe, use Enviro schools, and do something that's really creative. And we don't know what that will look like yet, but that discussion is taking place. Food waste, I've had the opportunity to talk with Louis, and he talk about cultivate waste. There's also a cool program called Ka Evolution in Waikato, which recycle edible foods, and there's sort of donate it to charities and food banks and stuff like that. And food networking. Now, this is one space I'm really keen on developing. I want to expand my knowledge on cultural food systems, and especially with Maori and Pacifica foods and their way of growing and, I guess, eating food and how they relate to it. I'm not an expert in that space, but I want to follow it. And that's what I want to see. I want to see more communities taking ownership and doing creative stuff that links back to the overall goal. And the fifth stream is more of a support stream, because like I said, you always need to think and factor in how you're going to develop capacity and capability for individuals to take ownership of your program, your solution, and you always got to leave space out, whether that be like funding, research, support, however, that's that one. And that's sort of where my work fits in as well, gathering that evidence base. Okay, now on evidence base, we're looking at evaluations like public health. You know, they're quite risk adverse, and social enterprise is something new. They're not going to just go ahead and invest public health dollar into social enterprises if there's no evidence to support what they're doing. So my goal is to gather evidence on social enterprises and the kind of health impacts or the health change they're creating. And Ka Pai Kai is part of that health change. This is hopes, fears, time. Oh, sorry. This is a time over graph over time diagram, which shows the hopes and fears of my community. And over here, you look at opportunities to access healthy, affordable foods. It's just one component of the bigger issue. You got to really break it down. So these guys looked at opportunities to access healthy, affordable foods. And from the 1990s, that's around when McDonald's got introduced into the community. The opportunities for healthy eating has been decreasing over time. And being able to sort of map that out actually raises awareness of the issue. It becomes a fear, because what happens when there's an overabundance of unhealthy food outlets. Doesn't mean there aren't any healthy outlets. It's just that the ratio to healthy to unhealthy is just unproportional. And if you have high exposure to all of this kind of stuff, all the crappy stuff, you're obviously going to access it. All right? It's about creating balance. Balance in the system, balance in the community, and balance in our diets. So potentially, we're looking at Ka Pai Kai as the flagship program to create that balance in the community. And that program being the heart of the social enterprise, being able to gravitate other nutrition programs in the community, other food programs, and link it so it creates balance in the community. And we want to monitor that change and gather evidence. So yes, we can tell public health, Ministry of Health, that it's worthwhile investing the public health dollar into social enterprises, into social entrepreneurs, so they can create these changes, because those are the interventions that are sustainable. All right? Government funding contracts can disappear overnight. If a government gets elected, things change, and local NGOs and charities and people who do really good work on the ground just are left speechless, you know, and they're frustrated and they hate the government, you know. So that's a reality I had to face in Tokoroa, so I'm just sharing that with you. Where are we today? Currently, we have 2 community service providers, so we're providing catering service on a regular basis to those, including the District Health Board. Whenever we have catering in the community, we always look to support Ka Pai Kai. There are 10 schools and preschools it's grown so fast. It's just unbelievable. And I have had to sort of balance it. It's a juggling act. And so many schools coming on board, being able to, deliver these lunches and promise that there's quality and all that. There's a lot of complexity, and that's why you need a lot of help. And that's where the locals come in, because those guys are doing the groundwork. And our goal is to extend it to all primary schools, all high schools, the local industries nearby, local community bodies, and any local businesses. So really, it would be a whole community supporting this program simply by simply by ordering Ka Pai Kai for their lunch. We're one step away from opening our society bank account. We're 2 steps away from launching our website. On that pamphlet, I apologize, our website is not kapaikailunches.org, it's kapaikai.org. It's just that, there was some problems with our initial graphic designer, web designer, and so we had to change our website. And it's kind of outdated too, so a lot of information, there's more stories to be added, and sorry about that, but still useful background knowledge. Measuring success, so some success factors. From the very start, my goal is to evaluate this, and I'll be measuring some baseline. But for example, some success factors I'll be looking at is community ownership. Success factor being that there was a community kitchen, access to healthy school food, the number of schools offering Ka Pai Kai, sustainability, long-term plans, so how many of those local organizations by the end of my 1 year in the community decided that, hey, we're going to have Ka Pai Kai in our annual plan. For us, we never had Ka Pai Kai in our annual plan for 2015-2016, but Ka Pai Kai is on the annual plan for public health for next year. So that's some of the stuff that we need to put down. That's what we need to happen with local organizations. Is anyone better off? So I sort of did this example. Yes, all schools in Tokoroa now have access to a healthier food option through KPK, Ka Pai Kai. 90% of those schools in Tokoroa now access healthier food through Ka Pai Kai. I know it's very statistical, numbery, but you can expand on this. Like, that's just in a nutshell. But is anyone better off is the part where you tell your story, how you got to that, all right? Some of you might be from organizations who have to do results-based accountability, or from ministries who have to do some similar kind of analysis. You've got to look at your input, output, and your outcome, which is pretty much what this is. Your outcome is what kind of change you've created, and it's so, so important to measure that change, because when you do, then you get government bodies supporting your social enterprise. And really, that's the stuff we need to capture as health professionals, the work that you guys are doing. So if you've done evaluations on your social enterprises and there's a health aspect and you've measured that, and if you're happy for me to have a look, if you're happy for me to use that in my study, I'm compiling a review of those for our region. And hopefully I can present that to my board and also write a paper on it and develop that evidence base to support social enterprises. That's the end goal for me. Okay, I think we're almost there. Oh yeah, and I'm trying to prevent obesity, and where does physical activity fit in all of this? Well, physical activity, I framed it up as a market for healthy eating. So where there is physical activity, there is promoting healthy eating. And in these spaces, we just need to make Ka Pai Kai available, or the only option in the community. Something along the lines of that would create a healthier food environment within sports clubs, within gyms, within schools, boot camps, and stuff like that. And the reason for this is because Ka Pai Kai is a lifestyle brand. All right, you're working with dominant structures in the community, like all the multinational corporations dominate over the local foodscape. They dominate against the green grocers, and they use market tactics. Now you got to be creative and use market tactics to sort of combat that, and you got to create any program. You got to frame your social enterprise that it's going to create a better lifestyle. It's a lifestyle brand. When people think about Ka Pai Kai, they think about how healthy they can be, how healthy they are, how happy they are. So that's Ka Pai Kai. Ka Pai Kai is a lifestyle, and that's what the future will look like. Some takeaway points in summary, traits of a social entrepreneur. So in my role, I've learned to be a big picture person. I'm socially conscious now. Inclusive, critical thinker, creative, resourceful, hard worker, people person, and a leader. You do have to lead at times so people and build that confidence in your community. And that's Nabila and Sierra. I couldn't put, actually, I left my USB stick with all the photos and stuff, so I only had a few on my laptop. So that's Sierra and Nabila, who really were the first people in the kitchen actually making the lunches. And this was taken almost a year ago. And that's the food basket. We did a photo shoot for our website. And those were some of the foods that were on the menu last year. So that's the summer lunch menu, though. That's what kids are eating. And the cool thing is that being able to access foods from the community garden, I got a call this morning from Lynn in the community garden. She's like, hey, we've got some veggies. Do you want to come and get it? And I'm like, hey, Lynn, I'm in Rotorua today. Can I come back on Tuesday? So I guess that's what it takes. You just got to communicate. And yeah, so hopefully more ingredients will be used from local sources. Right now we're tapping into New World and the Green Grocer. But there's some stuff that we can't produce locally, so we're using Bitfest because that's just straight from the hospital. That's a procurement chain that we're using at the moment. But now that we've got our account set up, we'll be looking at investing in local food sources more and more. Yeah, and it's definitely a feasible program. And I'll be fully honest with you. Last term, we made a profit of $3,000, and that's going to kickstart term 1 next year. This term, we're in week 3 or 4. I think it's a short term, and we've made a profit of $450. So it's not mission impossible. Yes, the cost is huge, and most of it just goes towards creating sustainability. And there's unfactored, like I haven't counted the rental space or the gas bill or the electricity bill that would be in a realistic setting. You'd have to account for that. But if you have collaboration and opportunities to use spaces for free, then you can definitely be successful. Yeah, cool. Are there any questions? I just want to go back to my model because I'm in love with this, what the community did. And everything's there, you know? And it's just the start. Yeah. Cool. That's me. That was about 35 minutes. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, no. The thing is, the cost initially when we were operating out of the DHB, we had biodegradable sort of clean packaging for our lunches. But when we moved into the community kitchen, we had to reduce our costs, operating costs. So you have to compromise in any social enterprise that's being run, there's different phases. And right now we're in a phase where we need to sort of save up so we can invest later. And we're working with 3 packaging companies to sort of develop a sustainable, environmentally friendly packaging. And that's come up a few times. But yeah, the reality is that environmentally friendly packaging does cost a lot. And if you can get sponsorship from big companies, then boom, you're in. And that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. The Vulnerable Children's Act means there's a lot of responsibilities we have when it comes to actually providing food to children. And we're still working through that document. It's a nightmare. Even getting students into the kitchen, they have to be supervised if they're under the age of 14. Yeah, like with packaging and procurement and the DHB policies, it's been very complex. It's been a nightmare. And you have to think about how you can save money and provide a reasonably, you got to feed the kids somehow. That's one of the challenges. And these are the practical solutions you got to look for. Can kids bring lunch boxes? Can we get sponsorship? So practical solutions to support your practical solution. Yeah. Any more questions? Anything about the mechanics or what you're trying to do in your community and how it relates? And I encourage sharing your evaluation reports, even if it's a process evaluation, and if it's created some sort of change, share it with your local public health units, and see what the response you get, because it may be actually useful. They may actually buy into your concept and support you guys. Change is happening, like you said, it is happening. Everyone here has noticed it. There's a shift towards social enterprises. There's a shift towards healthier, happier food environments and supportive environments. It's mainly because nutrition is now back on the priority for the government. And neoliberalism doesn't support majority of the time what we're trying to achieve locally, all right? But still, you got to just push on and just get that buy-in from your community. That's all. I'd like to hear if you guys are thinking about doing stuff with your schools that exists. And Lorna Skelton is behind that. She's the culinary arts tutor for Wairiki in Tokoroa. And what this pathway has been able to achieve is that when we had an alternative education cohort come in, we had about 6 students come in, and one of them got inspired to actually go on to culinary school and become a chef. And they picked up on that. They were like, "Where'd you come from?" I was like, "Oh, I spent time in the kitchen at Ka Pai Kai. You know, I was told that you guys offer this. Can I study to become a chef?" And they were like, "Okay, sweet." And then the next term, they sent in 3 trainee chefs in the kitchen, and they've been there most days supporting the kitchen and the volunteers. All right, thank you, Jasmine. Thank you very much.